Imagine checking your bank account this week and seeing a number that stops you cold. More money than you expected, more than last month. No letter in the mail, no phone call, just a deposit sitting there, bigger than usual, and you're standing in your kitchen wondering if something went wrong or if something finally went right. That moment of confusion mixed with hope is exactly what thousands of retirees across this country have been experiencing over the past several weeks. And the more you dig into what's actually happening, the more you realize this story is bigger than most people are giving it credit for. We are in May of 2026, and Social Security is at the center of one of the most emotionally loaded financial conversations happening in America right now. Not because of a new bill being debated somewhere in Washington, not because of a projection or a forecast, but because real money is actually starting to land in real accounts. For real people who have been waiting in some cases for decades. And when that happens, when something that felt impossible starts to feel real, it changes the energy around an entire conversation. So let's talk about what's going on, because there's a lot of noise out there, and a lot of people are confused, and honestly, some of the most important details are getting buried under the surface-level headlines. The foundation of all of this goes back to the Social Security Fairness Act, which was signed into law at the very end of 2024. Now, if you followed that story, you know it was years, actually, more like decades in the making. This legislation eliminated two provisions that had been quietly reducing or completely wiping out Social Security benefits for millions of public sector workers. We're talking about teachers, firefighters, police officers, nurses who worked in certain government positions, postal workers, and countless others who spent their careers in public service. These were people who paid into the system, who earned their benefits, and who then watched those benefits get slashed by rules called the Windfall Elimination Provision and the Government Pension Offset. Two provisions that a lot of people never even heard of until they retired and the letter showed up telling them their check was going to be smaller than expected, or in some cases gone entirely. The argument for those rules, back when they were created, was about fairness in a different direction, preventing people from collecting full benefits from two separate systems simultaneously. But what happened in practice, for millions of workers, was something that felt deeply unfair. They had done everything right. They had worked. They had contributed, and the reward for their decades of public service was a reduction that for many families meant the difference between financial stability and genuine hardship in retirement. And now, here in May of 2026, those reductions are gone. The law has been in effect for months, and the Social Security Administration has been processing back payments, retroactive lump sum deposits for eligible beneficiaries going back to the point when the law took effect. That is what people are seeing land in their accounts right now. Some of it is hundreds of dollars. Some of it is several thousand, and for people living on fixed incomes in an economy that has not been gentle lately, that money is not abstract. That is a car repair that can finally happen. That is a medical bill that can finally get paid. That is a grandchild's birthday that can finally be celebrated without guilt. These are not small things. These are the textures of daily life for people who have been quietly stretching every dollar as far as it will go. A lot of beneficiaries are saying they genuinely did not believe this moment would arrive. There are retirees in their 70s and 80s who remember when this fight started, who remember signing petitions and writing letters and watching bill after bill die in committee. And now they are looking at their bank statements in May of 2026 and feeling something they haven't felt in a long time: validation. Like the system finally looked at them and said, you were right and we owe you. But here is where things get more complicated, and this is the part that deserves a lot more attention than it's getting. The Social Security Administration is working through a processing backlog that is, by any reasonable measure, enormous. Estimates suggest that somewhere around 3 million people could be eligible for adjusted benefits and back payments under this law. 3 million, and the SA, which has been dealing with serious staffing and resource challenges for years now, is trying to work through all of that while continuing to handle everything else it does: new retirement claims, disability reviews, survivor benefits, Medicare coordination. The agency is under real pressure, and what that means for beneficiaries is that eligibility does not equal immediate payment. Some people got their lump sum months ago, others are still waiting. And if you are in that second group, sitting there in May of 2026 wondering why your neighbor mentioned a deposit you haven't seen yet, you are not alone and you are not forgotten. You are just in the queue. Personally, I think this processing gap is going to become one of the defining frustrations of the next several months. Because here is what happens in practice: word spreads. One person tells another, someone mentions it at a doctor's office or a church or a family dinner, and the person who hears it goes home and checks their account and sees nothing different. And in that moment, for someone who has been stretched thin and struggling, the wait does not feel neutral. The wait has a cost. The wait means another month of the same impossible math, the same calculation of which bills get paid and which ones have to wait. There is a deeper emotional reality underneath all of this that I think is worth sitting with for a moment. We are talking about a generation of Americans, people who built careers, raised families, contributed to their communities, who have spent their retirement years quietly absorbing financial pressure that most people never see. The grocery bills that keep climbing, the prescription costs that make no sense, the rent or property taxes or utility bills that don't care what month it is or what the economy is doing. These are people who planned, who saved what they could, who did what they were told to do, and who still found themselves month after month doing math that doesn't quite add up. Some people are starting to wonder whether this moment, these extra deposits, this long overdue correction is the beginning of something larger. Whether the energy and the political will that finally got the Fairness Act across the finish line can be channeled toward even bigger changes. There is growing conversation right now around how the annual cost of living adjustment is calculated. The 2026 COLA came in, and for many recipients, it still doesn't feel like it reflects what life actually costs, especially when you factor in healthcare, which tends to inflate faster than almost anything else seniors spend money on. Advocates have been pushing for years to change the formula to use a measurement that actually tracks senior spending patterns rather than a general consumer price index. And the question of whether that push gains real momentum in the second half of 2026 is one that a lot of people in this community are watching very closely. Others are more cautious, and honestly, that caution is earned. There have been moments before that felt like turning points, moments that generated real energy and real hope and then quietly faded without producing the kind of lasting change that millions of people needed. So there is a portion of the beneficiary community that is genuinely grateful for what the Fairness Act accomplished and simultaneously not ready to assume the momentum continues. They have been here before. They know how quickly the conversation can shift. They know that what feels urgent inside the Social Security community can feel invisible to the broader political world. What stands out to me right now is the contrast between those two groups, the people who are energized and the people who are waiting with measured hope. And I think both responses make complete sense depending on what someone has lived through. If you fought for 20 years to see the Fairness Act pass and you just watched it actually happen, you have reasons to believe that further change is possible. If you have been waiting for change your entire retirement and watched other efforts fall apart, your skepticism is not cynicism, it is experience. There's growing speculation that more legislative action around Social Security could emerge before the end of 2026. Whether that is in the form of benefit expansion, COLA reform, or something else entirely is still being debated, and the political environment is complicated enough that nobody can tell you with any confidence how it plays out. What most people in this space agree on is that the pressure is real, the need is real, and the conversation is not going away. So here we are in May of 2026, and the picture is genuinely mixed. There are retirees opening their banking apps and feeling a relief they have not felt in years. There are others still waiting for a payment that is owed to them and not yet delivered. There are families having conversations about whether this changes anything long-term or whether it is a one-time adjustment in an otherwise unchanged reality. And there are millions of people watching the broader Social Security debate, the COLA projections, the reform proposals, the political signals, trying to figure out what the second half of this year actually holds for them. The real question now is whether what we are seeing in May of 2026 is the beginning of a genuine shift, a moment where the financial reality of retired and aging Americans finally starts to move in a direction that matches the promises made to them, or whether this is a correction at the margins, meaningful but limited, while the deeper structural pressures just keep building. Because the cost of living is not waiting. The needs of seniors are not on pause. And for the millions of people whose financial lives depend on what Social Security does or does not deliver, that question is not abstract. It is the most personal and urgent question there is. And right now, nobody has a certain answer.